Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Pride Perspectives, a conversation with the community. We are here, it's a special edition this week as we are honoring all of our accepted students and those who have been on the calls for the week. We appreciate your attendance and hopefully we've covered a lot of different topics and all things Trinity-Pawling. So once again, congratulations. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future, whether it's sometime on campus over the summer or definitely in September. But tonight, specifically, we're talking about the practicum as well as the benefits that has within the college process. And this practicum, we're going to hear more about it from our college office, our faculty, but it's evolved over time, and I think it's one of the true pillars of the Trinity-Pawling education for our boys. And you know, we at Trinity-Pawling, we teach and learn from experience, and there's nothing more like our practicum for civic leadership that does that exactly. You know, everything we do with our academics is active and applied. We are out of our seats and we are learning. And I think with the practicum, everything that we do is just packed with hands-on, hands-on, hands-on. And that is how boys learn best in this academic environment. So before we get going and getting all of these great insight from our panelists, I'm JP Burlington, Director of Admission, class of 1995. This is my 6th year back here in this stint. I was working here early on in the 2000s, and then I was a 4-year student in the early 90s. And I wish the practicum existed 30 years ago. Every time I hear someone talking about their active learning, or Mr. Fidelli, who you heard from on Monday, talking about taking the boys out of the classroom while doing, I believe the book was A River Runs Through It, and teaching them how to fly fish. I would have taken in that so much more than sitting in a class and just going over, I believe it was that large book called The Anthology, Mr. Tiford. Is that still in existence? But that was a big book that I had, that was a lot of reading. So I want to start with introductions to the panelists. And I'm going to start with Mr. Weber, who's on my top right-hand corner. So Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, JP, and good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Weber, and I teach in the science department. I teach chemistry, currently honors chemistry, as well as AP environmental science. And I'm also part of a 3-part elective, which includes ecology, environment today, which is a current event class. And right now we are just starting an environmental lab series for the spring term. I coach with the varsity football team, and I'm also the head coach of varsity baseball. I live here with my wife and right now 1 child, because 2 are away in college, and they are both graduates of TP.
Thank you. Mr. Tiford.
Hi, I'm John Tiford. I'm in my 3rd year at Trinity-Pawling. I'm in the English department, where I teach primarily English for seniors and PGs. So the knowledge on campus is the path through graduation goes through my classroom, which makes for a nice setting because we can control what it is the boys possess when they leave. It starts in the fall with their college essay, which is assigned in my classes and which we work on for a great deal of time. We like to think that the boys learn how to communicate on paper as well as in person, because both of those things will make them standouts at Trinity-Pawling and beyond.
Awesome. We'll go to Mr. Fritz.
Hi, I'm Michael Fritz. It's my 2nd year here. I'm a senior, and I'm a prefect, and I play hockey. I'm lucky to be a captain this year for the hockey team. And yeah, I have a bunch of legacy that's gone to TP, and I'm from Pittsburgh, which is a little far away, but yeah, I usually make it there. But yeah, that's me.
Great. And Mr. Burner?
Yeah, my name's Toby Burner. It's my 3rd year, senior. the art prefect. I'm also a proctor. I like to play hockey, lacrosse, and I just tried out mountain biking this fall, which was cool and new. And I'm happy to say that I am a Haverford 25 commit.
Congratulations. That's awesome. And you also had, you spent some time here with your brother, overlap with your brother as well. So that's great.
He's a sophomore in college now.
Yeah. Mr. Mead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, JP. Welcome, everybody. My name is Slade Mead, and I'm co-director of college counseling with Mr. Harf, who you'll meet in a second. This is my 13th year here. I live on Dunbar North, which is a freshman sophomore dorm. And my wife and I have nobody left in the nest. So it's our dog, Nora, and our cat, Mookie. And I teach US government and a constitutional law class. And I'm going to pass it over to Scott Harf, who's the other co-director of college counseling.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Yeah, Scott Harf. I've been here for 6 years at Trinity-Pawling. In addition to working in the college office, I also teach an economics course, coach hockey, coach lacrosse, and then work in a PG and senior dorm this year.
Okay, so we're here tonight, Scott, to talk about the practicum, and I'm sure many of the families who are going to be listening to this webinar or who are joining us tonight have heard about it in bits and pieces on the website, maybe on their virtual interview that they had this year. But can you dive into the practicum and maybe its unique aspect here at the school?
Yeah, absolutely. So the practicum, which is, I'm going to talk about the three parts of it. It started out 6 years ago, and when I'm done talking about each piece, I'm going to send it over to Slade, who can kind of talk about how it's evolved in those 6 years. But the three main parts are the winter project. So that would be if you're a 7th or 8th grader, and then if you're a freshman or a sophomore, and you're doing a winter project. And a winter project is primarily faculty led from the beginning, and then it becomes more and more student centered throughout the project. But we have kind of 4 areas that we're looking at in the winter projects. They're the environment, entrepreneurship, citizenship, and leadership. And what teachers are tasked with doing if they're leading a winter project is pairing up with another teacher and then picking 2 of those 4 areas of interest and creating a project that leaves the realms of like the classic chemistry classroom or the algebra 2 classroom, and really diving into, let's say, environment and entrepreneurship. So an example of that this year was 2 teachers who have an interest in fly fishing did a fly tying class, and they brought in some guest speakers, but the kids were able to learn to tie flies. So that was an example of an entrepreneurship and environment project. Entrepreneurship and leadership, a good example from this year was Moneyball. So if you've ever seen the movie, I think it's with Brad Pitt, probably one of Mr. Weber's movies since it's a baseball movie. The 2 teachers combined entrepreneurship and leadership, looking at kind of statistics in sports and breaking down sports in that sense. So that's the winter project. And again, that's your underclassmen, so up through sophomore year. So if you come to Trinity-Pawling as a freshman, you'll do 2 winter projects. Then as a junior or as a postgraduate, you would do what's called the Global Collaborative Challenge. So this is where Mr. Mead and I jump in, and I've been lucky to lead that with him, I think, for the last 4 years. And it is by far my favorite time to be a teacher and be on campus. And the GCC, what we do is we take the juniors and the PGs and we split them up into random groups of 5 or 6 students. They get a faculty leader. As you move through the practicum, it becomes more and more student led. So the faculty leader helps guide them, but it's primarily that those students taking some leadership for themselves. They're given what I like to call, say is a question that the smartest adults in this world can't seem to figure out. We give a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds this prompt. And then at the end of the GCC, we ask them to give a 12-minute presentation to a panel of faculty members and defend. They're often they can appear as yes or no questions, but they're asked to take a stance as a group, which can be difficult if you have, 3 people who think the answer should be no and 3 people who think it should be yes, and they've got to come together and collaborate and then show unity as a group. So some of the questions we've had, I believe Mr. Mead led this one for several years now, but is the Electoral College the best way to elect our current president? I shouldn't say our current president, but a president. We had one this year about should dams be removed from the Pacific Northwest? So they can go in many different directions. They're questions that certainly cannot be answered in 12 minutes, but you're asked to research and again, to kind of come together as a group and give that and defend your position in 12 minutes. And every group has to have a visual aid. This year we did it over Zoom. It was really well done by the students, but in a normal year, it would be a live presentation. And then as a senior and as a postgraduate, you get the option to do this if you would like. You could choose to do the GCC, or you could do the SIP or the Senior Independent Project. So all seniors have to do that. And then new next year, the postgraduates, if you're a one-year senior, you get to choose between the two. And the Senior Independent Project is really, it sounds like a simple task. It's not necessarily, we can ask Michael and Toby later about theirs, but we really ask the students to explore something in a passionate way. So we understand that not every 17 and 18-year-old student is going to be necessarily passionate about one thing, but we really ask that they take a deep dive into a subject matter in a passionate way. So this year, Michael, and he can touch base on this a little bit later, but he wrote an original horror movie script. Toby, I'll let Toby tell you about his, but he's been raising money for COVID relief. We've had students build apps. We've had a student this year who built a longboard, and then a big piece. One of the biggest pieces of the whole experience is being able to communicate what you've learned and communicate your passion to a group of students and a group of adults. So every student is then every senior is then asked to give a presentation at the culmination of their Senior Independent Project. So I'm gonna kick it over to Slade. Do you want to talk about how the practicum has kind of evolved over the last 6 years?
Absolutely. Thank you for teeing this up, because from the college office, the practicum, and I'm going to sound very selfish here, it is a huge benefit to Mr. Harf and me when we are out talking to colleges about our young men. It gives us something unique that differentiates our students from the other students. And when about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized just how powerful the practicum is in the college process. When I realized about a third of the kids were answering the college essay on the Common App, they were writing about their GCC question, because you can talk about an important topic. So, usually these essays are kind of painful to read, but our guys are writing about, has NATO outlived its usefulness, or they're writing about global pandemics. Actually was a question before we had a global pandemic. That kind of scary how spot on it was. But we're using it in the college process to help sell the students to the colleges. And as much as I hate the pandemic, I will tell you, this was a godsend for us, because as many of you guys out there know, the SATs and ACTs basically got canceled, and a lot of schools are now test optional. So there's this gap when reading applications. When colleges read applications, they have no standardized testing. And we've been able to substitute the standardized test piece of the application with a synopsis about the students' work on winter projects, the Global Collaborative Challenge, and what they're currently doing in their Senior Independent Projects. And it isn't like we designed it knowing there was going to be COVID, but my goodness, we were very fortunate. And I would argue we're having probably one of the best college years we've had in years, because of the practicum being a key piece of the application process.
Yeah, and I wonder also, when we talk about this, and we have 2 teachers here that and we're going to get to the students and to tell us all about them. But both of you have been teaching a long time, and I know the evolution of teaching through all the years you've been doing it has changed. But maybe Mr. Tieford, you came in 3 years ago to Trinity-Pawling right in the midst of the evolution of this practicum. Can you maybe talk about how you've seen what we're doing for the boys, how impactful it is in different ways?
I can. As I said, I deal primarily with seniors, and so I'm always engaged in their thinking in their senior independent project. And what we came to learn a few years ago is the idea of independence is probably the very most important piece to this, especially to touch on what Mr. Mead had said. We want to demonstrate to colleges that these boys have a capability, that they've developed in a very adult skill. Independence is not something that's usually expected of high schoolers. We usually expect that we're going to hold their hands. Well, the boys who graduate from this program have shown that they have moved on beyond that. However, one of the ways that our program has evolved is we realized a couple of years ago, are we just kind of taking these boys and throwing them in the deep end of the pool and expecting them independently to invent swimming? And we've realized that there is a certain amount of mentoring and guidance and checking in on a regular basis to foster independence. Independence, like any other important skill, if it's not something people are born with, then it's up to us to help cultivate it and to help them develop it in themselves. Mr. Harf and I, earlier this year, because of this COVID year, we developed a program wherein the first-year seniors and PGs were doing a big part of their SIP in our English class because they had a project that they could imagine. They had a thing that they might be passionate about. But Mr. Harf and I decided they need to be able to tell this as a story. They need to be able to communicate it in a much bigger way. One of the young men was building a skateboard this year, and it's what he loved. But he did not know how to tell a story about the thing he loved. And so therefore, in communicating it to an audience, he had to have an audience of skateboarders in order to understand what he was saying. What we made him stretch to, and what he happily stretched to, was a system wherein he could communicate his passion about skateboarding to non-skateboarders. Now this became a big and important thing. Now this was growth beyond the passion he had for skateboarding and the desire to build one himself. Now it became a thing that the skateboard became the vehicle, no pun intended, but became the vehicle for him to learn these new skills. And that's what the Senior Independent Project does consistently. We've learned even more about it during this COVID year when we had to compress our timeline so much. And now we really think we've got a good handle on it as we move forward.
Yeah, and Mr. Weber, knowing that, I believe, what's the year here? Is it 19?
I'm sorry?
How many years have you been working here?
Yes, 18.
18. So you've seen an evolution of now 2 headmasters. You've seen different kids, students come and go. But there's got to be some sense of satisfaction when you're working with them in a different way. I know you love chemistry, and I know you love that classroom that you're in right now. But when you're doing those GCCs and you're doing those winter projects, there's got to be something that's different when you engage the boys in something outside of a textbook.
Well, it's absolutely amazing, actually, JP and everybody here. I think that the GCC, and for me, it was I've been involved in winter projects with younger guys and involved with GCCs with the juniors and seniors and PGs, and that independence that John's talking about allows them that deep dive, and that deep dive brings out creativity and inquiry and collaboration, and ultimately the goal being the learning, but also the communication skills. As I've seen that evolution, in fact, it's funny when you go into these, especially the GCCs, I've noticed you go into a GCC project and you have, as a teacher mentor, you have maybe 6 students with you, 5 or 6 students with you. And you're switching from teacher to mentor. I think as John was saying, or maybe Slade was saying, and the leadership emerges within the group. And once that, and that doesn't happen immediately. In fact, and Slade will laugh at this, I think that the students come in sort of like a deer in the headlights, is like, how are we going to approach this question? Mr. Weber, can you please help me? And you try and gently prod them towards their research and so on, or as John said, foster them. But they fall into their own roles within that group, and leadership and fellowship emerge. Right, the folks that are stronger in the leadership arise or emerge, and then the folks that are stronger in following and production, they emerge. But a quick anecdote is I had one group this year, and you guys, Slade and Scott, you might remember or recall, I had one group this year where I had 2 students from Pawling area, so just outside of Trinity-Pawling, either in the town or the neighboring towns. And then I had a student from China, a student from Korea, and a student from the Dominican Republic. And so we have 3 students in a group of 5 where English is their second language. So luckily we had a couple strong, we had one strong student locally, and he was the one that was able to really bring these guys in and say, hey, Mikel, who was from the Dominican Republic, why don't you speak about this from the perspective of your country? And the same thing actually happened with Kevin from China. So it's funny, I've heard this, and I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget that this is the worst thing and the best thing that students do, and that's from them. So I remember last year, standing in one of the dorms as one of the GCC meetings came back, and the next meeting to go was waiting there. What did they say? What did they say? Did they kill you? Did they, what was their commentary? And they were in fear, but fun. And then by the end, they say, that was the best thing that I ever did.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But for me, it's been a learning, I know you want to move on. For me, it's been, I think, a learning process for me in the classroom. It's helped me in the classroom because I realized how much you can get out of the students in that setting.
Sure. Go ahead.
To Michael's point, actually, this year, one of your groups, you did 2 GCs as groups, as I recall, but one of your groups had to do a university, environmental.
Designing a green university.
Exactly. And what for you guys out there in listening land, what happens is you give 2 practice presentations and you get a lot of feedback from Mr. Harf and me, and we're pretty rough. We're pushing you. And I think it's fair to say, Mr. Weber, your group was floundering. I'm kind of being generous. And before the final presentation, you guys had to basically knock the whole thing down and rebuild it. And your group was fabulous. And this is true for adults. Your parents are going to start nodding. One of the hardest things to do when you have to work on a project is to throw away work product that doesn't work. You fall in love with bad work product because of the time commitment. And I took my hat off to your group because they realized they were in trouble because they'd gone down the wrong path, and they broke it all down, rebuilt, and put on one of the best presentations, to the point where I was just amazed that this was coming from 5 kids who at the 3 weeks earlier didn't even understand the topic. So
yeah,
I get emotional just thinking about it now, to see some of the progress. And Fitzy and Toby, I apologize, I don't remember which GCCs you were in, but my guess is there was a moment of panic as the group that it wasn't coming together, and then you see the collaboration work, and then this 12-minute presentation just comes out, and it's a thing of beauty. It's really exciting.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, all right, so for 25 minutes, boys, these 4 faculty members have waxed eloquently about this practicum. I want to hear, though, from you guys. Now, Toby, you did all 3, and talk about maybe specifically what you're doing right now, because I think, sometimes people, we talk about the winter session and it's a 2.5 week period, but you're still going. So talk about your SIP a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm doing the SIP with distinction, so it's going into the spring. So I'm gonna be doing more like more in depth with it. So I'm doing an art auction with a collection of paintings and charcoal drawings of places around the Trinity-Pawling campus. And all the proceeds made from the auction will be donated back to the school for, like Mr. Harf said, COVID relief or anywhere else necessary. So I basically finished about like almost 10 paintings or pieces. And I'm kind of working with the communications department a little bit and kind of figuring out the whole auction part. And I'm really excited about it. But yeah, I did the GCC too, and I did the winter project my sophomore year, but I also did the winter project this year. I did the I forget what it's called, but we learned about galaxies and then we painted them. And then I also did the memory project my sophomore year.
So you have a slight love of the arts, because every one of those projects are art driven, which is fantastic.
Except for the GCC, yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about, again, the evolution of this, this was our first year with this winter session, this 2.5 weeks, and I know your SIP is going to go on forever. Well, and maybe until May. But until I buy all of your charcoals. But this 2.5 week winter session, and Mike, you can talk about it too, knowing that it was virtual, what was that experience like, rather than having a winter project or a GCC run through December, January, and February? Mike, yeah, go ahead.
So talking about the winter project over the break, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first choice was I tried to do the Moneyball one. I didn't get in that one because a lot of people wanted to do it, and I just watched the movie too, so I didn't get to do that one. But I did the history of rap with Mr. McDougall. He's a history teacher. I've always kind of liked history, and that's kind of my thing somewhat. So I chose to do that one. I don't even listen to rap very much, and it was actually really interesting to learn about something I don't really listen to or know about. So yeah, that was really interesting. I think the best part about it was there was that flexibility with the teacher, especially on Zoom, where he would either give us an assignment that maybe the next day we could not be online for as long, just to give us a break and to just work for a bit and focus on like the final project, which we made a podcast each person. So stuff like that. It was good online, and we didn't have to wake up super early, so that was a big plus. But yeah.
Well, and I think, anybody here, maybe Mr. Mead, just talk about, or Mr. Harf, that the 2.5 week session next year. I think it's going to be something that Trinity-Pawling has never done. We were virtual. It was everybody, almost all boarding schools went home on Thanksgiving and came back sometime in 2021. But go ahead.
It was funny, JP, because I mentioned earlier how because of COVID, we had the practicum to be used in the application process, and we're going to obviously continue using the practicum in the process. But another thing that we've learned from COVID is by having this 2.5 week period that's dedicated to the practicum, the work product was spectacular. Personally, I was more involved with the GCC because I helped Mr. Harf run that, because it's a great way for me to get to know the juniors for the college process. But this year's GCCs, through the COVID Zooming, we were worried, would it work? And yes, it worked. And one of the things we're going to take away from this year and use henceforth is this compressed 2.5 week intense time period dedicated just to the practicum.
And one thing I'd add is I think, and both John and Mike have already alluded to it, and Slade just did as well, is not only are the kids constantly learning here, but the adults are very malleable as teachers and as instructors and being educated themselves. And that's something that I saw, especially as we move, this was definitely something that had been talked about, but as other things in this world, like COVID kind of spurred us forward probably a few years. And it's something that now, every student's going to be doing a winter project, a global collaborative challenge, or a senior independent project for that time. It's about 2.5 weeks when we come back between Thanksgiving break and Christmas break. And it's always this really fun time. Like I went to boarding school too. It's this really fun time in boarding school because it's this sprint. It like Michael was saying, it's a little bit more relaxed. And I always found as a student that it was really frustrating to come back in January because your teacher tried to teach you something in December, and then you went home for 3 weeks, and like who knows what they were talking about in December. And so what this has allowed us to do is take this piece that we used to do it, it's changed in the 6 years, but the last iteration before before the winter session, we were doing it on Saturdays, but and then the GCC, we were grabbing guys and doing it at night, and it was really well done. But I don't think as a school we had invested the time in it from the students' perspective to see as much buy-in as we saw this year, even in a remote setting. And I think that's a testament to the faculty more, obviously like Mike and John have already said, but that kind of, like I said, malleability and willingness to adapt and change and continually learn, even as adults, is present in all the faculty here. And that's why I think the winter session moving forward is going to be one of these kind of hallmark pieces of school that's going to set us completely apart from many other boarding schools.
I would add that that continued learning, Scott, is an important piece for families and students to know, because some of these kids who have been in, I'll just take a couple of I built a couple of years ago. I was involved in a winter project where we built fly rods, and then that next year, a bunch of students wanted to get. I mean, because we had a line out the door for that one, but they wanted to get in and continue with that fly tying and fly rod building idea. I had another winter project years ago, which was basically a public service video. It was called Be Kind, and you could still find that out there on Vimeo, I believe. But it was about raising awareness about language and about teaching kindness, teaching empathy, and that group of students. That piece actually evolved into sort of an underground first, and then an open alliance group, which was gathering to talk about and address LGBTQ issues and other issues that were in the same arena. Same thing with some of these GCCs. I've had kids that have done my sort of environmental directed GCCs that have reached out to me via text or phone call from college saying, "Hey, Mr. Weber, I'm taking an environmental class."
Well, and Mr. Teever, I didn't prompt this. I wasn't going to ask you about this, but you taught at a different school before here. It was co-ed, and can you just talk about the 3 years you've been here? And we always talk about boys learn best, ...
Right.
And talk a little bit about your experience over these 3 years as you've seen the myriad of different boys that have come here with many different learning styles. Just talk about that kind of concept of, how boys learn best and what we do in that.
Like you said, before I came here, I was at a co-ed school, and there were times when I was curious about my own presentation in the classroom, because I am a man myself, and I have that perspective. And there are times when I would temper what I was saying in order to not be speaking to one gender or the other. And what I find here as a teacher is a certain amount of freedom because mine is a male classroom. I think that is also what the boys experience, that they have the ability to be themselves because they are not distracted. There are judgments that boys make of one another, but the judgments are different in a co-ed environment, even among boys. So there's a way for us to laugh even in a different way in the classroom. Not because something's bawdy or off color, but also because there's the boys are more interested in what happens and less concerned with how it looks. And in doing that, when a group of boys, when a community of young men becomes freed like that, then they seem to be more willing to try new things, or to experiment with a thing that might fail, or to get into a question that they might not be able to find the answer to. One of the things that we keep telling them, especially in the English curriculum, is that sometimes the answer in academics really does end up being, I don't know. That's important to come to that conclusion only after you have tried to find out. But sometimes the answer is, I could not acquire sufficient data to make a good answer. And that's a thing that we want the boys to be able to dig more toward that. Not because the answer is going to present itself, but because the process of seeking that answer is important. And when they do it more outdoors, with more activity, with more energy in a group, we find that the lessons that they learn stick.
Right.
Instead of just being with them long enough to get it out on a test, the lessons stick. Well, I think that's a thing of really great value.
Yeah, and
Sorry, that's me.
Mike, Fritz, you were here for now your second year. I believe you were at a public high school beforehand. What was in terms of maybe the practicum, in terms of we actually have to move on to this college process in just a couple minutes, but just talk about that first year, last year, and maybe what you've learned over the last year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, comparing a public school, I went to a larger public school, so that's also puts a different perspective into it, because you have guidance counselors with maybe almost 100 120 kids from like A to F or something, and coming here, it's so much different, especially with Mr. Harf being one of my coaches, being able to just ask any questions, or pretty much in general though, like smaller classrooms, stuff like that. It's a lot easier to, I don't know, get in touch with the teacher and not feel like just another kid in the class most of the time. It's actually, it's much more beneficial for someone that feels like they don't feel like trying to get involved with class as much, where there's no hiding, but it's a good thing. It's like, you're all, like Mr. Duford said, it's all boys that like to be, no one's really going to care what each other thinks about what's going on. So it's a good environment for that.
Yeah, and Mr. Harf, you mentioned the word counselor. So could you dive into a little bit about the I guess maybe the college counseling process, and then going backwards and toward what we call advisees and advisors?
Yeah, so we're a two-person office. You're looking at them right here, Mr. Mead and myself, and we break up. We really start the college counseling process December of everyone's junior year. So certainly, are we meeting with freshmen and sophomores who have questions about courses, athletic recruiting pieces, maybe looking for advice on colleges to visit? Absolutely, but we're really starting in earnest on that college application process. Getting teacher recs done, building an initial college list. That's all happening kind of midway through your junior year, and we really just kind of split up the group half and half, and it's very unscientific. It's, we'll go through, and I know this kid well, and Mr. Mead might know this kid a little bit better, and then we leave it up to the students if they want to switch back and forth. And that's something that's a huge benefit of having a small office. We work right down the hall from each other. People may worry that maybe we work in the same office sometimes because I'm over there all the time. But it's a very collaborative process. The other thing I'd add is, in addition to being both Mike and Toby's coach, I've also taught both of them. So by the time they come to us junior year, we know them very well. We're more than just college counselors. And then the bulk of the college process will be done with most seniors by kind of December, when we pick up the juniors after that. But we're still certainly working with, it's the middle of March right now, and we're still certainly working with students making final decisions or deciding, between different award letters or dealing with wait lists and stuff. So it's kind of this ongoing holistic process. In addition to having your college counselor, every student's also going to have an advisor. And your advisors that kind of main go between, number one, between the parents and the school. But it's also, I like to think about it as every student's advocate, adult advocate on campus, because obviously your parents aren't there. So that's the person that not only is, making sure that you're getting your grades and that you're reading the teacher's comments and going through that about what you can improve upon, but it's also someone that, if you've had a tough day, you can go to, or if, you need help solving a problem with, another student or another teacher or one of your teachers, that's someone that you can go to, more as an adult figure. And that's someone that, that certainly students are more than able to, change if they want. A lot of students stick with their advisor for all 3 or 4 years they're here. I know Michael and Toby, the prefects always go with the headmaster, so they've gotten moved around. But that's the other thing I'd add, and then I'll kick it over to Slade if he wants to add anything, is we do, when we write our counselor letter, which is your bit, you get a math or a science recommendation coming out of every high school, and then you get a English or a history recommendation as well. So you get 2 letters of recommendation. And then every student coming from Trinity-Pawling also has a counselor letter authored by one of us. But the Trinity-Pawling kind of formula is a little bit unique in that, as much as, I have many college advisees that I've coached or I've lived on the dorm with or I've taught, I also know that people like Mike Weber and John Tieford know other students far better than I could ever imagine. And so what we do is we take 10 to 12 of our best faculty writers who also have their hands in the senior class, and they all are part of what we've termed the Dunham Committee after our English chair, Bill Dunham. And between Bill Dunham, myself, and Slade, we run a draft where students get the whole junior class we'll do this in May for this year's junior class. Faculty get an opportunity to select 3 or 4 of their absolute favorite students. And it's incredible. Like people are like trading draft picks. It's incredible. It's like Moneyball again. But every student gets a letter authored by someone who knows them really well. So it's not this just generic, like Mike Fritz took AP biology and AP macroeconomics and then did this winter project. It's this very in-depth dive in who Michael Fritz is away from the classroom, who he is in the hockey rink, who he is as a prefect, who he is on the dorm. And that's like Slade talks about as our special sauce. I think that part on top of the practicum really sets apart all of our students' college applications.
One thing I'd like to add to that, JP, is that we do have every year anywhere from 10 to 20 postgraduates or first-year seniors. And we realize the Dunham Committee doesn't really help their case because they're not in the draft in May because nobody knows them yet. So what we do is we kidnap the new seniors early in the process, and we do an outdoor ropes course or some sort of group gathering thing. And basically, Mr. Harf and I are taking very close notes and trying to learn these guys. Who's got leadership skills, who has really good problem-solving skills, who adds the muscle to the group. And over the first 6 or 7 weeks, we're really taking note of these new seniors, and we will write their big letter, the same letter, but it doesn't get written until the end of October, when we've had a good 7-8 weeks with these guys. We do let new seniors or postgraduates get one of those teacher recommendations that Mr. Harf was talking about from their previous school if they want, but colleges will require at least one of the 2 teacher recommendations be from Trinity-Pawling. And I've talked to other schools, and I think it's very fair to say that we do a very good job with our postgraduates, which is great, because that's a concern. And postgraduates at Trinity-Pawling have leadership opportunities that they aren't given at other schools. We have postgraduates who are dorm proctors. We have postgraduates who can be captains of sports teams. And that's unique to Trinity-Pawling. And I think it allows these guys to step right into the community and be active participants. And that's reflected in the college office with the letter saying, look, the guy's already taking a leadership role in the school as a dorm proctor or as a team captain or as a member of the honor council, whatever.
Yeah.
So
we had a question come in, and I would encourage those on this call to type in a question in the Q&A, and this will go to our co-directors here. On average, what percentage of seniors get into their early decision college?
That's a good question. This year's class has approximately 85 seniors. If you take out the athletes who really can't do early decision because they're still in the recruiting process, I would say about 55 to 60 of our kids have the ability to go ED. Out of that group of 60, probably 40 of them will go ED. Sometimes you might have your first choice college doesn't offer early decision. So it's, or let's say we for instance, we have 4 or 5 kids this year who want to go to a UC school out in California. Well, they don't have ED. So you can't go ED because then you preclude yourself from going to UC. So to answer your question, this year, I think our early decision, we had 20. So close to 50% of the kids will get into their ED1. We had 3 or 4 who also got into their early decision 2. I'm sorry for those parents and kids who have no clue what I'm talking about right now, but if the seniors and juniors should. So JP, I'd say when you take ED1 and ED2, you're looking at somewhere around 60, 65%. Toby, were you ED2 at Haverford?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's a good example.
Can you do a quick definition?
Congratulations.
Can you do a quick definition of the two?
Yeah, decision 1 is in November, where you say, I really love this school, and if they take me, I agree to come. If you don't get into your early decision 1 school, right around the winter holiday, right around Christmas time. So in Toby's case, and I didn't work with Toby, Mr. Harf did, but you may have had an ED1 school didn't get into. Haverford becomes your ED2 school, which is your second school, and you got in, and it's a binding agreement, and you're done.
Yeah.
ED2 is a brilliant system that was devised about 10 years ago, giving people like Toby an opportunity to say to an amazing place like Haverford, I love you, I want to come there, and I agree to come if you take me, and boom, it happens.
And
that was a good question, the person who asked. That's an astute question, but you got to take into account, because and this is true with all schools, the UC schools really mess up that whole ED statistic.
I'm going to add one thing too to Toby's story, and we're going to go back. We'll circle back to the practicum here. Toby's a great example of a senior who leveraged the practicum incredibly well throughout the college process, because as he applied to Haverford in January, And then Toby, I think what was it, mid-February when you found out? It was about a month and a half later, probably.
Yeah.
So mid-February, when a lot of seniors around the country are starting to lay off the gas a little bit, Toby's out there continuing to work on a senior independent project, and it gave him, not me or Mr. Mead, but Toby, an incredible opportunity. You know, he's already applied to Haverford Early Decision. They know Early Decision 2, excuse me. They know that he's telling them, this is your Haverford's the place for me. I'm coming if you accept me. But it also gave him an opportunity to say, hey, look what I'm continuing to do as a senior. So it's not just continuing to take, you know, his 6 classes and ride off into the sunset as a high school senior, but he's also working on these, you know, 12 charcoal drawings and his watercolors, and building this website that he's going to be able to auction off for, you know, to raise funds for Trinity-Pawling families who've been affected by COVID. And that, I know from talking to the Haverford rep, was a huge deal, because it showed really who Toby is as a student, and his dedication, you know, beyond kind of the norm.
Yeah. And Mike, Fritz, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Hockey, I know, is a big thing for you. So what is your kind of plan moving forward?
So yeah, for hockey players, it's a little bit different. I didn't early decision anywhere. I applied to a few schools just to see if I'd get in without sports, just to see if I'd get in. But for me, next year, I'm playing juniors for 1 year, hopefully. But and then hopefully after that, I can maybe commit somewhere, go somewhere I'd really like to. But
Well, and I kind of knew that was the answer. And the reason I brought it up is because we had one of your fellow brothers, I'm not sure what year he graduated, but we've had a couple in the last 6 years that have done, not a couple, many kids go play juniors, but a couple of kids who have done what you're looking to do and end up at sensational colleges. And I know Mr. Harf, one of our boys, just landed at Hamilton, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we've had a couple do that and end up at some really, really good schools. And it's with hockey, especially, it's something that is in the last, I'd say, probably 7 or 8 years has become the norm. And what's happening is the admissions departments at these very select schools. So the student that Mr. Burlington is referencing, he's at Hamilton now. He was a great student, very similar to Michael. Came in also from Pennsylvania, came in and as a repeat junior, stayed for 2 years, and really high-end student, but wanted an opportunity to kind of boost his college list and to play college hockey. And so he went off, played junior hockey, and ended up at Hamilton. So great school in the NESCAC. And what these NESCAC schools and other high-end, kind of academic high-end Division III schools have realized is these students are coming in as 20 and sometimes even 21-year-olds, that there was this perception, especially when I was in school, that there was going to be this academic slip when you entered after taking a year or two off from school. What they're realizing is that actually there's no academic slip, and because they're a year older, a year more mature, they've lived away from home, that there's this actually additional maturity that they have. And so they don't, colleges are always worried about attrition and kids leaving after freshman year because they're homesick or not prepared or what have you. And these athletes that are coming in are not. So it's actually an advantage for the hockey players who have this opportunity. It's like, we see lots of postgraduates for baseball and football and lacrosse, but it's really it's the same idea, just without kind of that high school experience for hockey. So it's been something that we've really, again, we have leveraged it in the college office and as hockey coaches. Yeah. And any student who's looking to do that, you're going to go through. So Michael explained it beautifully. He went through the whole college process. So when he applies to, if Middlebury comes along and wants him to come, Michael's college recommendations are already done. He's got his Common App done. It's all ready to go and send out. So, we're providing this opportunity to get all that done, with some guidance. So you're not sitting in a billet house doing it alone as a 20-year-old having, not an English class anymore.
Right, right. So we have a couple more minutes, and I want to go to Mr. Weber and Mr. Tieford. And again, you've both been teaching for a really long time, and my question to you is as an educator, what excites you about the future of Trinity-Pawling? Mr. Tieford, maybe we'll start with you. So what have you seen over the last 3 years? What are you seeing now? What excites you about continuing to teach at a place like this?
I think, you know me, JP, I concentrate a lot on language, on the way things are said and what things really mean. And one of the things that's troubling sometimes is that a good idea that gets into the school world then becomes something that's co-opted by every school in the school world. And experiential learning has the potential to become one of those things that basically every school will claim. And experiential learning is important, and so many schools are trying it, and it's been proven to be such a good way to learn. But one of the things that most schools do not do is provide the time that's necessary for it to occur. And now with the plan that's going forward, where in the 2.5-week period between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we'll be committed to this type of thing. It means that experiential learning is no longer an add-on. It demonstrates that it's fundamental to the curriculum. So it's not a talking point. It's not a promotional activity. It's not a marketing piece. It's something that's becoming fundamental to the curriculum. And we like to think that we can be unique in many ways. And Trinity-Pawling has now proven that it's unique in the rarest way, which is providing the time to allow a thing to happen. That is singularly rare in the school world. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud that you and the administration have worked to make this happen. It's going to mean that in the future, we can do what we say we do. And that's a thing that we can all be very proud of.
Thank you. Mr. Weber, 19 years, 2 boys have gone through this. Hopefully there's many more years from this man in front of us. So what excites you about your school?
Yeah, I think we're moving in a direction of this deep dive that we were talking about earlier. And I think that's super important. Is I've moved that way with my students. I see other teachers move that way with their students. I think a lot of this is stemming from the type of work that we're doing in these smaller groups, winter projects and breakout groups and GCC, obviously. But that dive, again, going back to sort of that, that inquiry, that creativity, that hands-on, that brings out a deeper level experience than was the norm when I started. And I hope it continues to grow. I've talked about this in previous webinars, but I think that we do a great job of putting students, and I think that Michael and Toby would agree with it. We're sort of, they probably don't know that it's happening, but we were actually moving towards helping kids take healthy risks, right? JP, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, is that you put them in position, give them time, as John said, to take healthy risks, to dive into something. And through that, I think they become great communicators. I think they become super proactive. I think they learn to be resourceful. I think they learn to lean on and depend on others and show empathy towards each other, learning about, what are the strengths in each other and gaining from that. And those things in addition to, communication and confidence, I feel like that's the best that we do. And if we can continue to grow in that direction, as I feel like Michael and Toby have, and I feel like this whole panel has, we continue to grow with this. That's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I have promised every Pride Perspective, we are going to end before 8 p.m. And it might roll over as I'm speaking. So you got me there. But I first want to thank the panelists, Toby and Mike. Thank you for joining in. We look forward to seeing you this weekend, coming back to campus. Faculty, thank you so much. And again, on behalf of all of the Trinity-Pawling community, congratulations on your acceptance into this fantastic school. And we truly hope to see you all in September or down the line when we meet in person. So again, on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much. Be safe, be healthy, and have a great night. Thanks, everyone.